Hey friends, welcome back. So next, after loading the data, we need to make sure, remember, that our relationships are set up correctly. So in order to do this, we go to the model view here and just check what the current data setup looks like. So if I zoom out a little bit, we can see that Power BI automatically has connected the employees table to the orders table. That's fine. Let's hover over this relationship and we see it's based on the employee ID. That works. And let's take a look at the second relationship which has been created. Let me drag supplier on top as well. And if I hover over the supplier ID or the relationship, let's just scroll down a little bit. Where is it? Supplier ID at the bottom here. And you see that also this relationship was detected correctly. And also please note that you can see that in the suppliers table, supplier-ID is the name of the column. And in the orders table, it's only supplier ID, but written together. But still, Power BI was smart enough to figure out there is probably a relationship which is between those two columns and then between those two tables. Of course, if it would be wrong, simply right-click here and say delete. But this is correct, so that's fine. The only relationship which is not detected is from the dates table here to the orders table, which makes sense because be aware that we have actually two dates in the orders table, right? Remember, we have the order date, which is here, and we also have the ship date, which is here. So we can specify which of those two dates do we actually want to connect to the dates table. And of course, also the name date itself is a little bit different from order date here. It's not the same as supplier-ID and supplier ID, for instance. So, but no worries. Let's actually drag the table up here as well, and then go to create the connection. And we'll do this from the date to the order date table, because for the supplier, the shipment date, there are a few dates missing, simply because there is not ship date in the dataset yet, because the order has not been shipped yet. That's why I will go with the order date. So I will use my date here, and I drag this into the order, or onto the order date, like that. Drag and drop, and you'll see that now the connection is established, and it is a one-to-many or one-to-star relationship, which is exactly as expected, because the dates table contains each date only once. It's a continuous date range from the 1st of January 2020 up to the 31st of December 2022. So each day only one time. But of course, in the orders table, hopefully the date appears several times, because that would simply mean that we have several orders on the same day, which is of course what we wish. So that's it for setting up the model structure. That's totally fine. And again, I placed all the dimension tables, so all my filter tables on top, and the so-called facts table or orders table or sales table, I placed this on the bottom here. This is only a structure which I personally prefer. You don't have to do that. But we have the relations, and again, I'd like to focus or emphasize that these are one-to-many, and also the filter direction is from the one side to the many side. So it's best practice. And we also have our dates table, which is also best practice. So far so good. Let's now go to the, in this case, the report view, and let's get started with our measure creation, okay? So let's say we'd like to create a few basic measures. Let's say we want to use the total sales. We want to use what is the total cost, and we also want to calculate the difference as total profit. These are the basic measures we can create now. Okay, let's do that. So first and foremost, I like to create a measures table, right? So in order to do this, we know that we can easily do this by creating a dummy table. So I go to enter data here. And then for my dummy table, I again will name this measures and then TBL, just to be consistent here with the naming convention. And then I simply type in a 1 here as my dummy value here, just to have at least one dummy column. So just a second, and there the measure table is appearing. Now I can actually create my first measure by right-click here on the measures table and select new measure. You can also select the measures table with the left mouse key and then go to new measure here in the ribbon bar up there, right? So click on new measure. Here we go. And then for this measure, let me just zoom in so we can see that better. So there's measure, and let's call this total sales. So total sales is equal to, and what we need to do, remember, we have, in this case, an orders table. And this is exactly the same behavior as we had when we dive into our last data model. So we have an orders table or a sales table, and we want to iterate through this table. So maybe let me just increase it here. And in the table itself, we have an amount column, okay? And we also have in here a selling price column. So we want to multiply the selling price with the amount. And because we want to do this for each row in the data set, we again will use a formula we already know, which is an iterator function, which is the SUMX function. So we can use this, and SUMX, because it's iterator, means it's iterating, so going row by row through a table. So we can use here our __TBL, and then as an expression, we simply use the amount in each row, and we multiply this amount by the selling price. Selling price, here we go. Then we can close this here, and we are good to go. Of course, the last thing I'd like to do is to format this directly. Let's do it immediately. Let's select everything, Control-C to copy it, and I will go in here into my formatting option here. I go to New, and I paste this formula inside. I go to Format, and then at least I get my new line in here. So again, this is not compulsory. It doesn't have any benefit regarding performance or anything like that, but it's simply easier to read later on. And hopefully it's easier for you as well when you open this report and take a look at it. So let me paste this here, and I'm good to go. I press enter, and I got my total sales here as well. Okay. Now, the last thing I need to do is, of course, I then click on the 3 dots for my dummy column here, and I simply say I want to delete this from the model. Just a second. Yes, I'd like to delete it. We get rid of it, and you see that now this automatically becomes the measures table with my calculator icons on top. So easier to structure. Okay, so the next measure would be the total cost. And if we take a look at the orders table here, we see that next to the selling price, we also have a purchasing price in here. Okay, so we can then also, based on the purchasing price, and assuming that the whole amount which has been sold is also the amount which has been purchased, right? So there is no stocking in here. So, okay, let's do that, and let's actually calculate this as well. Of course, feel free to stop the video and try this out yourself. Otherwise, please feel free to follow along with me. So I right-click on my measures table here, go to New Measure, and here's the measure, and we call this total cost. So this time is again an iterator, so we use the SUMX again, and we iterate through the orders table, and within the orders table we say as the expression we would like to use the amount column again and multiply this amount, this time not with the selling price but with the purchasing price, so with our cost. Yeah, and I can close this and we are good to go. Again, I will simply Control-C to copy everything, and then I go into my DAX formatter here. Let's actually switch this to dark. I think it's easier for my eyes, so maybe for yours as well. And I go with New, and then I paste this inside, and I click on Format here. And just a second, and there it is. Let me just copy this, and let's go back to our Power BI report here, and just paste it inside. Press Enter, and we are good to go. So for these easy formulas, so easy regarding the length of the formula, it's probably you could also press Shift Enter to go to the new line and paste it in here and write it directly. But of course, with longer formulas, the DAX formatter option is, I think, at least for me, the easier way. So we got the total cost here as well. Okay, so that's fine. And then let's actually also calculate the difference. Simply call it total profit, which is total sales minus total cost. So right click on the measures table, go to new measure in here. And for this measure, I say this is my total profit. And what I meant is equal to, I could also now go Shift Enter to new line. And of course here I could also press a Tab key and right here, for instance, this is my total sales. So this one, and I subtract the total cost. So total cost, like that. So you can also write it directly in here if you want to do that. It's up to you. But still, I like to be consistent here, and I go in here and just paste it here inside as well. Go to New, paste it inside, go to Format here, and let's just check. Okay, okay, they did not do the indentation in here, but okay, that's fine. Click on Copy here, and I go back to my report, and I paste it inside. That's all. Okay, press Enter, and we got the third measure in here. So far, so good. Now, one thing I'd like to tell you here is the following. Our total sales measure, if I tick this option here, and let's switch this to a card visual just to see the number itself. And maybe also, let me just select it here and go to the formatting option. And for the label itself, go to callout value here and say display units, just set it to none, just to see the exact number. So 1.35 million. You might have already noticed that in the orders table itself, there's also a column which is called sales directly. This is from the data set already. So this is nothing we calculated. So if I take a look at the sales number here, if I tick this option and also switch this to card visual, it looks the same here, but let's actually dive a little bit deeper. Let's go in here and say for the callout value, also remove from the display units the auto and set it to none. We will see that there's a slight difference between those two values, right? So what does this mean? Is there any issue or error in our formula, which we've done here? So no, there's not. The difference here is simply because in the specific sales column, there is one actually mistake, which is there inside the data set. And I just wanted to point this out, just in case you see this and then you're wondering if there's any issues regarding the formula. So I just want to mention this, there is not. The value we calculate here is the correct value. And the value here in the data set, this is actually a wrong value, right? Slightly different because I think there are 1 or 2 rows, so entries which are wrong, which are not calculated correctly. That's the only difference here. Okay, so having said that, let's actually have a look at, in this case, all the measures which we have created. So let's say, just as an example, I'm going with my dates table here, and let me create maybe a visualization. Let's go in here and say we'd like to see the fiscal years. So go with fiscal year here, tick this option. And then for the fiscal year, we'd like to see the measures. Let's drag in here total sales. And then we also add here total cost here and total profit. So all the 3 measures in here, and we can see them. And let's also increase the size here a little bit. Let me go to the formatting option and go to the values in here. And for the values, let's actually set this to, I think, let's check out 14. So this could be big enough just to see that better on your screens. Of course, if you follow along, then of course you see that then on your own screens as well. So we can see the measures in here, but obviously they are not formatted, right? So we don't see a dollar or any other kind of currency symbol so far. So of course we could now select each of the measures individually here, and then I could go and click on the dollar symbol here and maybe set the decimal numbers and so on. But of course, if you have several measures, like we have here already, 3 of them, this might take a little bit of time, especially if you have a lot of measures you create. So how can you speed up this process? Well, you could go to the, in this case, the model view, go there. Then you can see that you got your measures table in here. That's also fine, right? And also remember that the table itself is not connected to anything, but this is expected. But the more interesting thing is the following. You could now select all the measures together. So I can select the first one, and I can hold my Shift key and select the last one. Now I've selected all of them. Or if I want to do this individually, I can hold my Shift key, right? And my Control key and select individual of them. You can also do that. But now I have those 3 measures. And here under the property section for the measures, I can here format them in bulk. Meaning I could say I'd like to have maybe 2 decimal numbers like that. I can press that here. And for the formatting, I could say I'd like to see actually a currency. So select currency in here. And then under currency format here, I could specify I'd like to see this as English US dollars, for instance. Or I could also choose Chinese renminbi or yuan. I'm not sure what is the correct expression for that. Or I can use euro or Japanese yen, Swiss franc, and so on. But in this case, I will go with dollars, United States. Okay, so far so good. And now let's actually have a look at, in this case, back of our report view. Let's take this option. And now you see that all the measures, so all of those 3 measures have been formatted together. And there's no need for us to select individual measure and then do the formatting in here. So this is the bulk formatting option, and also a smart or neat little trick which you can apply if you have several measures and you want to combine them or format them together and save a little bit of time. Okay, so that's that. So we have created our base measures and also learned a few tricks along the way. So hopefully that was helpful. As always, thanks a lot for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.